Now, with that being said, I'm going to try something here with my technology. Are we ready, Tony? Tony's going to zoom in on the TV right here, and I'll see what happens here. See what happens here. All right. These are pictures I've taken. All right. This is the synagogue in Capernaum, and you can see this is it's a limestone. See, it's white. See, it's important. Notice that it's white. See the pillars. That's standing. That was built. This is not the synagogue Jesus was in. It's the location of the synagogue. This was built in 300 A.D. I've got a date right here. 300 A.D. Inside the Capernaum synagogue that was built in the 300s, which is sitting on top of a basalt stone synagogue, which was there in 30 A.D. Now this is archaeology. This is not mysticism. This is not some church holy site. This is archaeology. Of course, you can always argue with it, but we're at the right location at the right time. This is not the synagogue Jesus preached in, but this is sitting on top of the synagogue that Jesus preached in. Then there's no doubt about it, because it's a synagogue in Capernaum. And so there it is right there. You can see the front of it, and there's pillars and stuff. Okay, I turned this like this. I zoomed in on it. Now I've lost everything. All right, here we go. Oh my gosh. See, this is what I was worried about. Okay, there it is. Now, we're outside that synagogue. We're to the west side of the synagogue. Can you see this? There's those pillars that were on the inside.
Yeah.
There's the limestone right here. You can see this. That's the 300 A.D. synagogue. And then down here, see the black basalt foundation stones right there? Or not, yeah, you can say foundation. That is the synagogue foundation of Jesus' day. That is the synagogue Jesus preached in. Just between 30 A.D. and sometime in the 300s, this synagogue wore down. They just pulled off all the basalt stones, and they built it with a nicer white limestone on top of it. So it's the same synagogue. It's just remodeled with new stones, same foundation. And you can see outside here, you can see the basalt stones and the basalts. You can see the pavement out here again, the basalt stones. And we're still going to go through this right here. Now we're going to be on the. I think we're on the east side now, and this is the basalt stones right here of the original foundation, and here is the floor, the basalt stone floor of 30 A.D. So this floor and this foundation, this wall was there in Jesus' day, and then you've got the building in 300 A.D. on top of that, and that is in Capernaum. There it is again, looking at the basalt stones, and so it's very clear. You can see a very clear distinction. There's no debate about that. And again, if it was a synagogue, they would have built a synagogue on top of the synagogue. Here it is again, and now you can see the basalt stone foundation, the floor, but right here, between these lines, that's the floor of 300 right here. This is the floor on inside, and then this is the wall going up. So this is the floor, this is the foundation, this is the floor on the outside. Just another picture of the same thing. And now you're inside the synagogue, you're looking to the front, looking kind of towards the west. And this is where people would be. See, there's some benches over there, some pillars. And that is some of the work on one of the pillars. And you see a little menorah right there, carved in there. And notice, interesting, just so you take a note of this, a tripod. See, there's 3 legs on it. There's a tripod, which is, make a mental note of that. There's your 7 lampstands with a tripod. That's what they carved in there. That's what they saw, or they understood for their menorah. And there's other things we could see in there also. Now, this is the truth. If I'm standing there looking into, not here, I'm looking into the synagogue right here where Jesus preached, and I turn around like this and look south towards the Sea of Galilee, I see this. This is a modern building over a series of other ancient buildings honoring a holy site right here. This is the house of Peter. This is Peter's house. See, that don't look like Peter's house. It looks like something from the Jetsons or whatever. Right, I understand. But right inside there, right inside here, we're going, see, these are all basalt stones. See the black basalt stones. These are all houses, buildings, and there's streets and walkways here Peter's house is right here. They went immediately to Peter's house. And I can show you this, again, Capernaum, Peter's house, as viewed from the synagogue in Capernaum, Sea of Galilee in the background. See this right, that little blue spot right there? That is the Sea of Galilee right there. So when you're standing in the, if you look south from the synagogue, you can look right, if you, of course, in those days, these buildings would be up higher, probably when you'll see it. There's the Sea of Galilee right there. That's how close it is. So they were on the Sea of Galilee calling Peter and James, Andrew, John, and they went into Peter's house. On the Sabbath, they went to the synagogue. This is all taking place right here. Now, you should ask, how do you know that's Peter's house? Well, his address. It's like his name's right on the mailbox. No, we don't know that. And I can show you why. Now I've gone over to Peter's house, and I've looked back at the synagogue. My back is to the Sea of Galilee, and I'm looking at the synagogue. And there you can see the white limestone of the synagogue. And there's the basalt stones of that was naturally around the area. These were probably shipped in, obviously, because everything in the city, including the millwork, the industrial machines they made, were made of basalt stones, as was the original synagogue. At some point, they came into some money. Someone donated something. Some rich rabbi, some rich leader helped finance the rebuilding, and they brought in white limestone, which is very nice compared to the basalt stones. All right, so again, we're in Peter's house. That's how close they are. You see how close they are. You can look in from the synagogue, see Peter's house. Now we're standing here. Now, I'm standing on the side. You can see Peter's house over here, and you can see the synagogue there. These are two pictures slid together, but how close is it? See this stone and this stone? They're the same. There's a little seam right here. I left these stones like that, so you kind of get a picture of how it wasn't like I took a picture here and then turned around and took a picture here. I took this picture and I took this picture, and there's the seam, and that's how close. This would be other residences and stuff going on there between Peter's house and the synagogue. Again, I'm overdoing this, but it's I've got the pictures. I mean, who am I going to show the pictures to? Okay, now we're standing kind of in Peter's front yard, and there's the Sea of Galilee. So here at Peter's house would be here. Now the synagogue would be over there. Peter's house would be, we kind of out here in Peter's front yard, and there's the Sea of Galilee. And this is where Jesus would have walked. This is where James and John, Peter and Andrew were probably down there on the coast. Now, this is Peter's house. This is underneath that big Jetson-type building. And you can walk on that, and you can look down through the glass floor and look into this. And the reason they know this is Peter's house, it goes like this, is they would have like, the Dome of the Rock is an octagon. It's got the sides. Octagon, right? And then they would take holy sites. The Christians in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century, well, it would go Byzantine time period, 300s, 400s, they build an octagon around. It's a hexagon or octagon. I can't remember what it is. Is it 8 sides? Dome of the Rock? This is something I should know. Because they would build holy sites, the Byzantine would build that shape around holy sites. Well, what you've got right here is the Byzantine building right here, honoring what's inside here, but the Byzantines are honoring a site in Capernaum that already has something built around it from the from the 1st century into the 2nd century. They're already honoring this room right here. So this is most likely built around, this was not Peter's house.
It's a hexagon, Galen.
What's that?
I think it's a hexagon.
Hexagon, okay, thank you. And hex is 6? Okay. So there's 1, 2, you see the hexagon being formed there. The Byzantines would do that. But before the Byzantines built there, they are already honoring a site that was already honored by the Christians. There's all Christians graffiti in there. It wasn't just like, well, what is this? It's a Christian holy site from the 1st century. They would continue to meet there, and so they built something around it to kind of honor it. Well, when the Byzantines came in and Constantine Christianized the empire, he builds a hexagon around it because this is all. Now again, he just built, there's a building. This is just the remains of the building. So there was a building around this building, which was around a room that was honored in the 1st century. And now we got the Jetson thing, the building on top of all of that. In the 20th century, they built this other massive thing over the top, looking down at the Byzantines, which is looking at the first century, which is looking at something that was active in Jesus' day, which leads you to think, because of Mark chapter 1 and other writings of the Bible, that's where Jesus stayed. That's Peter's house. That's where these things take place. And especially when you stand there and you just look this way, there's the synagogue. So there's every indication. You can argue about that if you want to. But really, if you're going to go to archaeology, you're going to follow church history and all that can trace it back. What else is there? What is that? There's no other place in town. There's all kinds of ruins in town, but this goes back, and the Christians were honoring this room in the first century. And so you would think the church continued to meet there where they started meeting in Peter's day, which is pretty cool. I mean, we're looking at a site that, well, Jesus was there. Again, inside that original room there. And this is something built around it. I can go back and get my pictures. There, now you're getting closer. If you walk in there, now you can start seeing what was the walls and stuff of Peter's house in there. This was built around to honor it, to protect it, but this was the original room where Peter's mother-in-law, or one of the rooms where Peter's mother-in-law was, where James and John and Peter were, where Jesus stayed, and Jesus stayed there. Jesus stayed in a house in Capernaum. He either stayed with Peter, and this is questionable, he either stayed with Peter or he had his own place. And again, I could go either way. I mean, I think he had his own place, because Peter's already crowded, you know. But, and there it is again. There's my hat hanging in the front yard on Peter's gate right there. So that's my hat right there. So that's, again, you can see the building coming out here. Here's a gate outside of the Byzantine wall, outside the first century wall, outside of Peter's house. And then you can see other things going around there. And up on top, you can see that's the new modern building. And then here, I step out in the front yard again, and there's the Basalt Stones. You can see the remains, just, you know, houses, roads. And then you look down there, and there's the Sea of Galilee, right down there, the Sea of Galilee. In fact, you can see across Bethsaida, where Peter was from, would be right over in this general area right here. And that's how close it was right there. And now you're on the Sea of Galilee, and you're sailing north up to Capernaum, and that's Peter's house. That's the modern church sitting overlooking down again, like to look at. And then back behind there would be the synagogue. So Sea of Galilee. There's the coast where they were mending their nets, where they were fishing, you know, somewhere along here. And that's where Peter's house. And when he meet each of the house, they went to the synagogue. So that whole Mark chapter 1 is taking place right there. I mean, and that's pretty. There's not much speculation there, because you've got a synagogue that's been a synagogue for years. You've got a house that's been honored from the first century. You've got the Sea of Galilee. You've got the coast. You've got the whole deal happening right there. So that's kind of fun. When you go to Israel. The first time I went to Israel, I was like, oh, okay, I'll go to Israel. You see a bunch of religious stuff, you know, I don't know, say I've been there. And then you start going to the archaeological sites, not just this one, but many where they're excavating scientifically, and they're bringing stuff up. It's like, holy smokes, there's no religious sites here. This is a scientific excavation, and this has got history going all the way back to and also, it's like, I didn't know this kind of stuff existed. So I went back in 2010, wrote a Jerusalem book. Went back in 2012, took some people, said, look at this stuff. And now here I am, showing you pictures of my vacation. So next week we'll look at some other. Okay, I'll quit. Thank you for being here.